Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie Diona, and this year we're kicking out 2020-24 with our very first Hot Topic segment. So my co-host today,
Deanna Brown.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get it rolling. We're going to be talking a whole lot of FAFSA and a little bit of financial aid. This is Financial Aid Awareness Month, so we're going to give you a couple resources, but we thought it was a great timing to kick into this whole FAFSA process. If you've not yet heard, hopefully you have, but the 2024-2025 FAFSA application has been revamped. And with that revamping, there has been a whole lot of talk, a whole lot of discussion, and Deanna and I being in the field as access partners, we got a lot to say. So let's kick it off. So we're going to talk about how it went, how it's going, and then what happens next. So What are your thoughts?
So the Department of Education released the FAFSA around December 31st. It was delayed this year because of FAFSA simplification. So basically what that whole process involved is the Department of Education removed a lot of the questions on the FAFSA to make it easier for students and families to complete. They also mandated that the financial section is being handled through the IRS behind the scenes. So that is a much more streamlined process for students and families this year. And they've also expanded eligibility for federal student aid with some calculation changes with the formula. With that being said, because of the number of changes, during the month of January, they have instituted a soft launch period, which basically means that they're allowing students and families to complete the FAFSA, but they're also taking the FAFSA down during some scheduled maintenance to make sure that everything is kind of flushed out, make sure there's no kinks in the system. And in addition to that, they're actually not transmitting the information to schools or to state agencies like FEA yet until sometime end of January, early February. So we can kind of start also talking about some of the different issues that we've seen during the soft launch, but that's kind of the gist of what's going on right now with the FAFSA.
All right, so now let's break it out. The rollout. That weekend, I don't know if you were paying attention, but I was paying attention, and I even went onto the site a little bit. I think it was December 30th, and they said it's a soft launch, so the goal was to kind of bring it up for a little bit and then bring it down.
Yep.
How do you think it went?
I think it was bumpy in those first 2 weeks because the site was going down a lot, but the department did prepare us for that, right? So they did say that they were going to be taking the site down, but I think it caused some anxiety because a lot of families just got so happy that the FAFSA was out there and they were rushing to complete it, and then were not able to do so in those first few weeks when the site was down for maintenance at different periods. So it was a little bumpy, but it was to be expected.
You said that so nice. So my experience, it was a little rough, I thought. I thought the way it rolled out, what I expected, I figured, okay, they're going to launch it. It's a soft launch. Not that many people are going to know about it, and it's going to kind of get rolling. And then we'll be able to see all of the different changes and play. And I even said, well, maybe I'll go out there and create one and do one and just delete it. I don't need the FAFSA. But I think, even though they said it's a soft launch, I think everybody who's been anticipating this, even though they said we don't really encourage everybody to hit the website, they did anyway.
They did anyway, yeah.
So I don't think the Department of Ed was prepared for as many people. I don't really think the application was prepared completely enough for everyone to get all the way through. I also think that they realized that there are some additional things that still need tweaking and working on. But at this point, everybody's ready. So I think it was a rough start. I think the intention was good. I think legislatively speaking, there is a mandate that says you have to have a FAFSA out by January 1st, 2024. So they did that. They did bring out a FAFSA by January 1st, 2024. So if you think of it in that sense, okay, it was successful. However, I do think it felt a little rushed. I wish there were more time in advance to kind of like get all the kinks out for folks like us to really be able to see it before we have to go out into the world to help the students and families, because we're in the beginning it's kind of like, okay, it's supposed to do this, or this is a user error, or no, this is a system error. And I think some of that was a little challenging. Something I will point out, so we both heard of Mark Kantrowitz. He's a financial aid expert in the higher ed community. He says, this is a quote that he says, it seems consistent with a process that was rushed at the end with inadequate testing. And then they went on to say that they're building a plane while flying. And I was like, oh, okay. So the second quote, they're building a plane while flying. Some parts of it, I think, did feel that way. Kind of like, okay, we're moving along, and then as they're realizing there are things that are going wrong, they're pausing, and they're able to fix some things not quite yet. But I think a lot of it also is just the anticipation, I think, on our end of a more simplified FAFSA, a more user-friendly FAFSA and all of that. So I think the initial rollout was a bit rocky.
Yep.
What I could appreciate in it is that they were aware, so that they started saying, hey, let's work to try to fine-tune this. We are aware that there are some things that aren't perfect. We're going to work to fix them. And then there were some bumps in the roads that they were able to fix. So I could appreciate that part from aside from like some of the comments and things like that. Was there frustration on a lot of folks' end? Yes. However, I think it's getting better. And you and I are doing FAFSA completion workshops. This is our season now to do these workshops, and let's talk about that part of it. So that was the rollout. So let's talk about how's it going now. What's your experience been thus far?
So I would say I've had a mixed bag, but I would say for the most part, I've had successful events where if we're able to give students and parents proper instruction, and also they come prepared with already having their FSA IDs created at least 4 days prior to the event, for the most part, it's been working pretty smoothly. In fact, I've had so many parents comment, that's it? They get done with the application, and they're like, wait a minute, I thought this was this big bad FAFSA. Like, what happened? Like, did we skip something? I'm like, no, and I think that they're surprised in regards to the IRS retrieval, where everything is being done behind the scenes. And so a lot of the frustration and a lot of the complicated questions that they were expecting aren't there. So I think that that's been good, and it's also been a lot quicker. So I'm seeing when students and parents come prepared with that ID already done, we have the student start the application, then the parent do it. It takes no more than a half hour, whereas before it could take up to an hour, depending on what kind of
the path that they needed to take, right?
Everything that they had. Now, are there some issues? Definitely. I think there's some customer service issues going on where when students and families do have to reach out to FSA, they're unable to, they're not able to get through to their telephone number. Sometimes they're not able to get through on the live chat. I have had parents say that they've had more success emailing them than anything else. And then there's some issues. I think we're seeing more and more issues centered around the FSA ID, where people are saying, when I go to try to create my ID, it's saying there's already a Social Security number in existence. And
that's
I feel
a lot.
like,
I don't know why that's so many of those
this year than any other year that I've been doing this. So I think that's something that we definitely need to be on the lookout for, to see what's going on with that. And then the other big thing, they didn't update the income protection allowance for parents.
And I want to talk about that a little bit more in the next part. But just my experience also, I do agree, everything went really well. When things go well, they go well. So I like the FAFSA and the redesign. When it is doing everything it's supposed to do, it's much more streamlined. It gives students a nice onboarding process where they're able to understand how it starts, what to expect, and what's going to happen after they complete the FAFSA application. The parent wizard, I think, makes things a little easier for the students when it's time to decide, well, whose information is needed on this FAFSA form with me, who's my contributor, especially when you're running into a situation where it's a divorced or separated scenario with the parents. A lot of times students may not know, or parents may not know, do I include my spouse's information, do I not? I think that little parent wizard section that guides them through is a lot more user-friendly as well. And again, like you, those families who have completed the FAFSA and they just got through, they're kind of like, wait, are we done? That's it?
Yep.
And then those who've done it in the past have also said some of the same things.
Yes.
Hey, this is it. And even when we did one of the FAFSA workshops at headquarters, and we had folks coming in, and there was the one parent, she was like, well, wait a minute, I did it last year, and I'm doing it this year. And she's like, did we miss something? Where's my income information? I don't know if we did it. And we're like, no, that's it. That's the beauty of this all of your federal tax information being transmitted in. So there are good things I think,
And
that are
that's one
happening
thing
with it.
I want to comment on. I think that one tweak they could make is that when they consent to having their information transferred from the IRS, they get some type of confirmation message, because I think a lot of families don't realize, well, first of all, that consent screen is very long.
It's huge.
And I doubt that anyone is reading all of that language. So they're consenting, but it's still not clicking that, hey, this is being done behind the scenes. So I think it would be nice to add like a confirmation at the end of that to say your information was successfully transferred from the IRS. And that way they can feel confident that the financial questions have been
That they have all
taken
those
care of.
questions in
Yeah,
there. Maybe
yeah,
that can be
definitely.
something for next year when when they're in there. I also think another part that I do like about it is the provisional independent section that's in there. So for those, and I've had that happen several times. So I've had some students who are experiencing homelessness and they're unaccompanied by their parents. So they're not within the company of their parents, and they're kind of like, well, I don't have anybody who's going to help me. You know, they're not in a safe space with their parents to be able to get their information. And that provisional independent section, are you experiencing homelessness or were you at risk? They say yes, and they're still allowed to complete the FAFSA application. Whether it's an unusual circumstance or it's just a homelessness question that's out there, because those questions are there and they're up front, it explains to them, I think, rather easily to say, hey, you know what, you'll be considered. This information is going to be shared with your schools. And then they kind of move forward, and they're still not stuck,
right?
You know, without being considered for financial aid, without the assistance from their parents. So I do like that part. I do think the one question about do they want to be considered for the unsubsidized, that's confusing, right? That's a confusing question, because it kind of puts it into the affirmative, kind of like saying, yes, I want to be considered, without realizing why.
Right, without realizing they're taking themselves out of consideration for need-based grants when they answer yes to that question. And I feel I haven't come across one family who doesn't stop at that question and either say yes because they're thinking, you know, and you know, so if you're not standing with them, I've had a number of situations where students have accidentally said yes to that, not understanding what's happening. They're just going to skip the parent section, and then they're not going to be able to be considered for need-based grants. So they definitely need to, I think they need to change the wording of that question.
So for the listeners, do we need to explain what we're talking about there?
Yes.
Okay. So on the FAFSA application, on this year's FAFSA application, there's sometimes a student's parents refuses to provide their information, and they're required to complete it. It's not in a situation where they fall underneath the unusual circumstances where the parent has been separated from the child. Maybe they're in an abusive situation or something like that that just says, hey, it's not good, or I don't know where my parent is. Maybe we just don't get along. Nope, they think they're going to be held financially responsible, which is not the case. They just will not provide their information. If the parent refuses, then the student will not be considered for your basic federal state aid without the parent's information. And there's a question that will tell the student, hey, your parent's information is required. And then if they do not, and the parent refuses, it will say, do you still want to be considered for the unsubsidized portion? It's assuming that your parent is going to be refusing, and you're not going to be considered anyway, so at least we'll consider you for this. For the student whose parent is willing, you do not want to say yes, because you're automatically going to be considered for all types of aid, federal and state aid and institutional aid, simply because you did do the entire form along with your parents.
Right. So I think that the way they had it worded last year, they should revert back to that, because last year it was a little bit more clear, and it basically said, I am unable to provide my parents' information, and then they would go from there. This year, they have it in a really big box, and then the way they have it, like you said, it's in the affirmative, like, basically, I want to be considered for direct unsubsidized loans. I'm not going to provide my parents' information. And then they look at it like, well, I do want to get loans, so I'm going to say yes to that. So I think if they just reword it to more how it was on the last year's 2023 FAFSA, I think that would be better. Yeah.
And then I think also, from my experiences, the things that I don't like, in addition to that, the issues that are coming up for those contributors who do not have a Social Security number now.
That's a big issue.
Because that part's not worked out. And so there have been some issues with completing the FAFSA application for students in its entirety if their parent is a contributor who does not have a Social Security number because they're not able yet to establish their FSA ID. So if you can't establish your FSA ID and your information is required, right now they're just kind of saying hold tight, that it's going to get updated, and then when it gets updated, they'll be able to complete that. So I know that's been a frustrating piece for some. And again, those FSA ID issues in general, if you're able to get through with your FSA ID, you're good. If not, don't give up. They're still working through some of those. And there were some things that folks had some challenges with in the beginning. I think, remember there was an issue where some folks were going through and their address, if they put it in, it's kind of like they couldn't advance through
the address.
And so they said, well, let's remove it out, and then it'll let you go through, and then you can update it on the form. That stuff started to work. And so they are working on it. So I say for those who are frustrated, hang tight. Help is coming on the way. They are aware of many of those issues that are out there. And then go ahead.
And I was going to say, and they still have time to make corrections, because what I've been explaining to families is that even though they're allowing you to submit the FAFSA right now, it's not actually being processed yet. So don't feel like you're under this gun, like, oh my gosh, I have to make a correction right now, because honestly, it has not been sent anywhere yet. Once they open it up for corrections and actually start processing to send the information to schools and to state agencies, then you will have time to make corrections at that time. So usually when I explain it like that, they're a little bit, more calmed down. Like, okay, all right.
I agree with you on that. And even those who've run into other challenges, and it's kind of like lockdown is what I'm saying, for lack of a better word. Your information is locked down until you're at that point where you can update. And we just say, hey, you know what, you'll have time. They're like, well, what happens about my school and the deadline? They're fully aware. They're part of this process too. They're not going to get your information. You're okay. So that reassurance does help out from a student standpoint and from a family standpoint, to take the worry out, like, am I going to possibly miss out? Because we always stress the deadline. Make sure you know what those deadlines look like. But going forward, we do know that the information is going to be pushed to the schools, to FIAs. And when we say information, all of the students' information that's out there. So the institutional student information records, also known as ISERs in the financial aid world, all that data is going to be transmitted after January 2024. And at first it was saying by January 2024. Now I'm seeing after January 2024. So it's going to come at some point. The Department of Ed, now one thing that they did say is that the Department of Ed will now update the income protection allowance tables, whereas before they weren't really quite sure how that was going to work for the 24-25 application year. The good part about that, for those who don't know, the income protection allowance tables, what it kind of does is it kind of balances out the inflation. So as the inflation kind of rises, it kind of levels it out for the student and the family. So with those tables being put into play and things like that, now that we know that they're going to do that, I'm wondering, is that going to delay that information going to the schools? We don't have any information yet, because this was pretty recent. We don't fully know exactly how that's going to roll out, but I do think it's good that they're putting it in there, because it does open up the opportunity for more students to be considered for federal aid or need-based aid. I think the Department of Ed was saying it's about $1.8 billion of student aid that more students and families will be eligible for, because of the new tables being put into place. So that, I think, is the good news. Students don't have to wait. But I think for the schools, I don't know how schools are going to process that, if schools will have the time that they want to be able to process through everything, make sure their systems are compatible with this new system, and have they had a chance to work out, and I wonder, have they had a chance to get any of the test data that's in there to say, okay, this is how it's coming in, this is how it's working. Those are questions to be asked. Hopefully, whatever this process is going to be, it's going to be more streamlined than when it used to be in the past. But, it's the fear of the unknown now. How's this coming? And are they going to push everything in one shot, or is it going to be staggered? And those are the things that, I think if I'm thinking about the whole financial aid process for everyone on every end, from the Department of Ed to the schools. Okay, so now the schools get it, and what's that experience going to be like?
I think it's putting a lot of pressure on the schools because the calendar has already been condensed because the FAFSA was delayed, and now you're putting them in a more condensed calendar to get everything processed and get those financial aid offers out. So it's, you know, it's a lot of pressure right now, and I know post-secondary schools are concerned about this. So hopefully the department can get that ICER information out as soon as possible so that, you know, everyone can have a sigh of relief.
I think it will work out, though. At the end of the day, it's going to work out. Because even if you don't know how the information is coming in, we hopefully know that it is going to come. Schools know how to evaluate financial aid. So they're the experts in this part. I think everybody's kind of holding their breath, but I'm hopeful that it's going to work out. The key thing that I want hopefully students and families to remember is that this new application process is new, but awarding students financial aid is not new. The evaluating financial need and getting students what they need to be able to make the decisions that they need to make for their school, to choose their school, I don't think that's going to be a new thing too. Everybody just needs to give a little bit of grace, I think. And then we all know May 1st is what we call College Decision Day. You got to make a choice, right? And I think some of them are wondering, I've heard chatter, you know, will everybody have everything that they need in time for May 1st so that they can make their decision? I'm pretty hopeful that they will. Because I always think May 1st, College Decision Day, is an exciting day because you start seeing students, you know, you have some schools, you know, they make a big to-do about it and things like that about, you know, hey, here's my choice, but they need to have all of their financial aid information and knowing what they can afford right there in order to get it done.
Right.
Also things to remember, May 1st, that's one of our first deadlines with the Pennsylvania State Grant Form. So I'm also pretty hopeful that we'll have everything we need so that the students can start to, so that FIA can then from that standpoint start to process through everything. Don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we also do know that we have a new system, Grant Us, so students will have an opportunity to enter their information with a new platform. Fingers crossed everything goes smoothly and they will not have any issues. And we're going to hopefully hear students and families say, you know what, that was a really easy process with that Grant Us system that we have. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, what we want students and families to remember is complete the form. There have been some challenges in the beginning. It is getting better. My last few FAFSA workshops, I've had less problems. They've been more streamlined, and they've been knocking them out. A couple bumps along the way, but not that much. Ultimately, though, we're still there assisting families. Still reach out to the schools if you run into any challenges that are out there. Students who have special circumstances and they're saying, hey, you know what, this looks a little iffy, reach out to those schools immediately, even before they get, even before they get your information, let them know it's coming. And this is your particular scenario. Ultimately get the forms done because that is, the FAFSA application is still that primary application students and families need in order to be considered for the financial aid from the federal, the state, and those institutions.
I think one other thing to add too is that if there's a situation for some reason, if a student can absolutely not complete the online FAFSA for a variety of reasons, they can always do the paper FAFSA. And that's what I've also been telling families. You know, if you get to a situation where, you know, you're having a situation with your ID and you can't get the online FAFSA to work, you can download a paper FAFSA PDF from their studentaid.gov and then just complete that and mail that into the Department of Education. So if all else fails, do the paper FAFSA to get your application processed. So I think that that's also another thing for families to keep in mind. And as far as people that are concerned about the school's deadlines, reach out to those schools' financial aid offices. I'm sure they're aware that the information has been delayed, so they may be adjusting those deadlines. It may show one deadline on their website, but when you talk to the school, they may have adjusted that. So I would say don't panic. You know, everyone's in the same boat. You're not behind anything. You know, you're not behind the 8 ball. So relax. Everything's going to work out.
Great point. And I asked a couple of my schools, you know, because I knew their deadlines, their priority filing deadlines had passed or were coming up. I'm like, how are you all handling it? Are you changing it? They're like, we're not making any changes, but we're aware of it. Because they don't know when they'll have everything that they need. So instead of putting a new date out there, they're just allowing the information to come in. And I said, so the best answer is to just tell the students to reach out to you, and in the meantime, they're like, absolutely, because they'll reassure them that they'll be fine. Just get it completed as soon as possible. They are aware that not everyone can get it done right now. So
And then also some schools use the profile, the CSS profile, so that may give them the information that they need in order to process a lot of the information. So there's a variety of different scenarios out there. So families should be aware that, you know, it's not the end of the world if, you know, you can't complete the online FAFSA today.
Right. So let's summarize this real quick. 24-25 FAFSA application. What's the grade you're giving it thus far?
I'm going to give it a C.
C? I'm going to go with a C minus right now. It's still moving along. And the minus comes because I don't know when certain things are going to take place. Okay, and maybe that's just me. I just need to know it all right now. So what's the actual transmission date? You know, and maybe it's too soon to tell. When will those students those students who have parents who don't have Social Security numbers be able to get that done? Give us some dates or something like that. But I'm going to say a C minus because, again, this was a huge undertaking, first in over 40 years. So when you consider that, you know what, it's doable. It's you know, they're cutting it.
I think next year it could get to an A. Like once they tweak it a little bit, get some of these issues worked out, you know, with the people that don't have Social Security numbers being able to complete the form, reword some of the questions like that direct unsubsidized question that we talked about. I also think they need to do a little bit of work around the signature piece, because I think having the student's signature and the parent's signature so far apart is causing issues too. With the student having to, you know, do their part, sign it, then they log out, and the parent logs in. It just, you know, sometimes that can cause issues. So I would like to see that more streamlined, similar to how it was in previous FAFSAs, where the student signs the FAFSA, the parent signs the FAFSA, basically within the same step. But I think overall, that financial piece with those questions being eliminated, you know, things that they weren't able to get from the IRS being taken off the FAFSA has been so much of an improvement. I just give them a great score with that one, because that was really the crux of most families' anxiety with the FAFSA.
I agree.
So with that part being removed, I just have to give them a lot of credit with that part being done. So.
I concur on that part. And the other part, honestly, most of the grumbles that I have that would prevent me from right now saying you're at a or B, it's not so much, it's more of what I know, what we're experiencing, our frustrations. But for that student and family who had no issues going through it,
they love it.
They love it. So it's
when it works very nicely because it's done so quickly. And, you know, like you said, they're so surprised. They're like, wait a minute, that's it. So when you get that type of reaction after you're done with the form, that's what you want to get.
Yeah,
you know,
there's the plus on that.
I think it was too easy. That's basically what the reaction that we're getting. So.
And it can never be too easy. So that's a good thing. Still, as that reminder, make sure you're knocking out that FAFSA application. If you need help, reach out to us. We are 13 higher education access partners all throughout the state of PA. We're in high schools. There are local community events that are happening. Reach out, let us know. And then as we wrap up, because it is Financial Aid Awareness Month, let's just talk about some resources, because we want students and families to make sure that they know about financial aid. They have a good understanding of financial aid. The first one I'll throw out there is, if you don't know that much about financial aid, go back and look at some of our old podcasts here at the Higher Education Access Corner. We can have some that are there. Right? You catch that plug, right? So we're going to plug that because it's lots of good pieces of information all throughout. So that's one. You got another one?
I would say studentaid.gov, tons and tons of resources on that site. Everything you would want to know from A to Z in regards to student loans, grants, the FAFSA process, loan forgiveness. So that's definitely a great resource. And then also our website, FIA.org. We've got tons of resources on our website. We have videos, we have publications, we have electronic publications.
All free.
All free. So definitely, and then we also have a lot of webinars that families can watch on FIA.org/virtual. Tons of great information out there. So I would say those two websites, studentaid.gov and FIA.org, I mean, you can't go wrong with those two.
Absolutely. And studentaid.gov is the website from the Department of Education. That's the same website you go to complete the FAFSA application. So that's a good one. And then one of our, it's not a new site, but it's been revamped, is youcandealwithit.com. So that one is also powered by FIA, and it's all about financial literacy. So it's a great one. It's an area for students, for parents, for educators out there. And then we can't forget educationplanner.org and mysmartborrowing.org. Also websites for FIA. And again, all about college and career planning, making sure students understand how to borrow wisely as well. So lots of great resources. So for everyone in the financial aid community, make sure you're doing something fun and promoting financial aid awareness to your students, your families, and your community. For those of you who are listening to us, we thank you for joining us again today at the Higher Education Access Corner. We'll see you soon.